Hi, welcome back to Let's Talk Retail. This is our 30th episode. This is CJ San of the Shangri-La Plaza. You know the drill. Subscribe. We're on YouTube. We're also on Spotify. Let's get this episode on the road. We are on our 30th episode, and our special guest will come in from Singapore. He's part of the founding member team of PUMA India, and was instrumental in establishing it in a leadership position. It became the #1 sports brand in India, delivering double-digit bottom line and creating presence for the brand in every trade channel. He has now assumed a regional role, joining the PUMA Southeast Asian family in June 2020, and he was part of the expansion of PUMA in the Southeast Asian footprint. His last role was Executive Director for Sales, where our guest was responsible for expansion, delivering sales for India, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Bhutan. He set up the PUMA web shop in India and its aggressive expansion of e-commerce in the marketplace. Okay, now our guest is now handling the ASEAN region. Let us welcome Mr. Sanjay Roy, the General Manager for Southeast Asia of PUMA. Sanjay joins us from Singapore. Welcome, Sanjay. Welcome to Let's Talk Retail. Hello, Sanjay.
Hello, CJ. So such nice of you to give me such kind words. Thank you for having me on your chat.
And thank you for accepting this invitation. You have been with PUMA for the past 15 years, and before that, you were with Li and Fong, right? Okay. Can you tell us this journey of yours? I mean, what were the obstacles, were the challenges as you went from your base country, Miss India, into a regional group?
Sure. So, CJ, I've been a product person early in my life when I was working in Li and Fung, mostly handling export markets at those days. Right. So exporting out of India to rest of the world. And in early 2006, I focused on the domestic market. That's when I joined PUMA in India as one of the founding members. And I worked in PUMA, as you said, for 16 odd years. It's been a very, very interesting journey. As you can think, 16 years back, India was still at the very start of its retail development. Nothing much had happened. It looked like an underdeveloped retail environment. And in the 16-year journey that I was there, the country changed from a retail aspect. What used to be, mom and pop small door business became big malls. Then it moved to e-commerce, and then it became to social commerce. So over the past 16 years, I've seen the entire retail development in India, and it was a beautiful journey to be part of. And that entire journey, PUMA has done exceedingly well. We came into operation in 2006, and just to give you a reference, we were the last sportswear brand to enter India in 2006. Our competitors have been in India for about 10 odd years before us, pretty well established. So we came in, started fighting for our business, and in the 10-year journey as a team, we became the largest brand. But in 2015-16, we were already beaten the likes of Nike and ID in the market. We became the largest brand in India. Also, we became one of the very few brands which became heavily profitable in India. So not only did we do a great sales business, but also a great profitable business in India. So I've been very, very lucky, and I've been very, very happy to be in part of that journey. I think the team in India built a great success there. I think most critically for me, what really gets me excited is things that we did in 2006, and we saw the retail market then. And by the time I exited the country, which is 2020, the country has completely changed. The retail development in the country has changed. The way the malls operate has changed. The way the retailer changes, the way brand changes, the way the consumer is behaving has completely changed in those 15 odd years. And that's what gets me excited to see that journey completely.
But you're now doing the regional role, okay? Yeah. So what are the key traits, or what are the key success factors now that you need to have so that you'll be able to grow the business amidst challenging times in the region?
Yeah, I think the first and foremost thing, CJ, that you need is a belief that your market is also going to grow. Okay.
Okay.
Sometimes when we see a market and we kind of underpin the market and we feel that the market does not have the potential. So the first is to have the belief that every market consumption is growing and it will grow. And once you have that belief that it's going to be there, then you start taking calculated risk in that market. You need to take some risk in that market without which you cannot reap any benefit out of it.
Okay.
Third, third critical part is you need to bring innovation in a market.
All
You
right.
cannot operate in a market without innovating or finding a new way to deal in that market. Market tends to change after every few years. I mean, in my journey of 15 odd years that I saw, there was a time when we used to only deal with street shops. And when a new mall used to open, we would never walk into a mall because we would assume that the consumer will not walk into a mall. And then we saw consumers walking into malls. And then we saw small malls are dying, but only large malls are operating. So you need to, you need to keep innovating with the formats. You need to keep innovating with the product. You need to keep innovating with your marketing. That's a very critical success that you need to do. And I think the last piece of this is we are all global multinational companies, but the success can only be achieved if you have local players in a local staff who understands the market and is able to take a global brand home to the local where it matters. So you need to be able to touch the local through local people. And that is the last bit. So the success of a country is dependent on the last mile, is how good your local team is, and do they understand the local culture, do they understand the local aspect of the market. And that, I think, is what I would like to bring into Southeast Asia also.
Okay, that's a good point, especially the understanding of the local market, because aside from growing in our country, our retailers can look at ASEAN, which is a trading bloc, all right? So, and, however, how do you get there? So, of course, the lessons can be learned from the global brands, such as PUMA. All right. You work now in the regional headquarters. Interestingly, like any other corporations, you have at least 4 generations working for you. Baby boomers like me, of course, you haven't established you're a Gen X or a millennial. Okay, so you have a Gen Xers, the millennials, and also the Gen Z. So how is it now to work with 4 generations in a corporation?
As you can expect, it's quite challenging when you work with 4 generations of people, right? The older generation, you may call them baby boomers, but let's say my generation of people, they are still a little traditionalist in nature, right? New ideas always, they're a bit less receptive to new ideas, right? They're generally a bit less receptive.
Okay.
They question a lot more while adopting a new technology, right? They want to be sure-footed, right? When they land on a new technology, when they land on a new mechanics, they want to be sure-footed about it, right? Vis-a-vis the new generation or the millennials tends to be a little more risk-taking because they don't carry the baggage and they tend to operate quite differently from that perspective. Okay. They're also a bit more impatient in what they're trying to achieve, and hence a very contrasting position. But what impresses me, to be very honest, is from the younger generation is how much more smarter they are, how much more caliber they have, and how quickly they are able to adopt. I see that, I mean, if I remember myself in my early 30s, what would probably take me 2 to 3 years to gain, they tend to gain that in 5 to 6 months. Okay. And I think that's very, very impressive. They're able to figure things out far more faster, far more quickly than our generation of people, what we're doing. So I think when you deal with them, you have to keep that in mind that they're fast learners. Okay. Their ability to accept change is very quick. Okay. And hence you have to keep them inspired at all points. You cannot just assume that they will be happy doing what they're doing for a long period of time, right? So you have to give them new challenges, new topics of learning very, very often. Okay, so I think every generation you see a different strength. I think with this generation also you see that strength that, okay, fast paced, yes, you have to give it to them, and they are able to deliver on it. So I'm very impressed with. Uh, I think their ability to grasp things very fast.
So you welcome the diversity in age groups.
Yes, I think that's extremely required in a large organization. You need all sets of people. In a big organization, you need people who are fast on their feet, and you also need people who are able to think through critical investments. Okay, look at their experience and dive into it and see how this investment will flow through. But I think you need this extremely good balance between people who can shoot from the hip and people who are able to sit down, think through a process. And without this good balance, it becomes a bit difficult, or your organization becomes lopsided.
How about the diversity of the ASEAN? Okay, how do you work with the complexities? I remember before this meeting, you were talking to us about some complexities of your coming into the Philippines. Okay, so what are
I
your
mean,
advice?
yeah. So I mean, I have 4 country teams already working with us. I have a Malaysian team, Indonesian team, a Filipino team, and now a Vietnamese team. But if you look at my Singapore team, it's probably 50% Singaporeans and 50% expats. Okay. And when I mean expats, I don't mean European expats. I have expats from Vietnam, Philippines, Thailand. We have over 13 nationalities working in a Singapore office.
All right.
Okay. That's a lot, right? Dealing with 13 nationalities, they think differently. Their thought process is different. Approaching topics are different. I think that makes it very nice, hot place to operate in. And every culture, even within, let's say, within a Singapore and a Malaysia is different. With a Filipino and a Vietnamese is different. With the Vietnamese and Indonesia is different. We need to understand that they operate, their trigger points are different to operate, and one has to accept for them for what they are, okay, and not try to impose a European or an Indian or a Chinese method of working on a local. It generally will not work well. Okay, so you have to allow them to operate in the manner they are, which is why my first point, to win a local market, you need localized support. You need the local guy to make that happen, and sometimes it is going to be slightly different.
All right. We're now May 2022. It's been 2 years and a few months of the pandemic. Let's start off by saying, how did the pandemic affect you personally?
Personally, quite bad. I mean, I was moving into Singapore in between the pandemic.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I moved to Singapore in November of 2020, which is, you can imagine, was the peak of pandemic. I spent some 50 odd days traveling from India to Singapore, staying about a month in Dubai and stuff like that. So it was pretty challenging, and then of course tough. But I think pandemic taught us a lot of different things, right?
Okay.
We never expected the world to halt, right? To shut down. How to operate without running to an office. I never thought that's even possible, not to go to office and still have a business running. How we can operate from a distance and still businesses happen and things were working. So I think it taught that a lot of assumptions that we were carrying are false. Okay, and it also taught us that the way forward from here is going to be a lot more technology oriented, lot more digital oriented, lot more working from a distance oriented, and uh, we have to learn to do this. Okay, it's something that in every brand, every country is experiencing this change.
Okay. So hindsight. Okay. Hindsight's 2020. What would you have done better when you were dealing with the pandemic? Because now Singapore's more liberal. Okay. What would you have done better in managing the corporation, the PUMA brand, and the PUMA business during the pandemic?
Okay, it's a question in hindsight. Okay, in hindsight, if I knew the pandemic is about to ease down in about a year and a half, I would have gone and opened 50 more stores across the world.
Okay.
Okay. I would have squeezed the mall retailers and asked them for
That's awesome. All right.
I
All
would
right. That's
squeeze
the
the retail-
opportunity.
I would have squeezed the retailers to give me great rentals and open 50 more stores immediately.
All right.
And that's definitely in hindsight.
Fair.
Also, what I realized, what we all realized, is during this pandemic period, different brands took a different approach, but the approach that Puma took at a global level, and there's not an SCA level, is we said we will not cut our supplies chain and not cut our orders to a factory. So we will buy what we have producing. We will not cut anything, and we will ensure that there is enough supply. This was in a situation where everybody was thinking offline is going to slow down or a shutdown, hence consumer demand will drop a lot. It did drop a lot, but for us, there was still a surge in consumer demand because other brands or other markets did not provide merchandise and we provided. So the pandemic years has been brilliant for Puma. We
Okay.
have grown over 2019 almost by 80% by 2021. So the 2 years of pandemic has done exceedingly well for Puma. We have almost close to doubling our business in Puma during this period. Okay, so that has happened because we have not cut our supply chain out. Okay, so in hindsight, I would have only taken it even more. I would have only made it even bigger from that perspective.
Now, still the pandemic, do you think that online sales will take over offline sales, given pandemic involved customers?
So CJ, I come from an experience of India where I started e-commerce in as early as 2015, 16.
Right.
And by the time I left India at the end of 2019, e-commerce had become about 30% of our business, okay, which is very large, right? During the pandemic period, it jumped up to about 45, 47% of our business.
All right.
Post-pandemic, the end of pandemic, there is going to be there's the absolute sales of e-commerce is not coming down.
All right.
Okay. But the offline is picking up. So there's two ways to look at it. If you look at a share of business, of course, it is going to come down because another side of business is now catching up. People are going out to see their movies. People want to go out to the malls. Okay. So if you look at the share of business of e-commerce will come down a bit. But if you look at the growth in e-commerce by itself, it is still going to grow at a good double-digit growth. Once a consumer has changed its buying behavior from offline to online, it will continue holding that part. Overall demand will grow. They will go back to offline also, but for certain key product lines, they will still remain online, is my assumption. Okay. They will be, how do I put it? There will be a decline in the share of business, but not a decline in their overall growth, I would say.
So I noticed you're building a lot of stores. You're planning a lot of stores. You're going to have a flagship store soon. So why all these investments in the offline experience?
Okay. So the way I see this, CJ, is that I segregate the market in 2 or 3 different halves. In my opinion, there is a consumer who's searching for experience. There's a consumer who is wanting to walk back to the store and look at a product and feel the product. That consumer will not buy online. He will still want that experience from the offline. You cannot replace that consumer's experience by buying it online. He's not buying the commodity. He is buying the experience which comes along with the product. Okay. That consumer experience you cannot replace. There is another consumer who is a more younger consumer who is still very digitally savvy.
Right.
Okay, he still will go to online and shop. So the consumers are different. The offline consumer is going to be a slightly more, how do I put it, a more richer consumer who will value experience more than the product. Okay, and for that consumer, you need to give him the retail presence. That is one. Two, even today, the brand building side of the business is still happening in the offline. The online segment cannot still build brands in a big way. It's the offline, the brick and mortar, which still builds brand. So you want to be a big business, you will have to win the consumers in the offline first. If you're a big brand on the offline side only, or a big business on the offline side, only then can you have a sizable online business, but not the other way around.
Okay.
So I would always invest in the offline to take the pinnacle customer in, and then have a slightly bigger distribution on the online side of it, or lower distribution network.
Okay, I'm glad you brought the topic on building the business and building the brand. Puma has been around for almost 75 years, 74 to be exact, right?
Yep.
So how does a legacy brand like this, keep it fresh, especially a market that's evolving? You have the four kinds of market: your original baby boomers, and then now you have the Gen Xers, the millennials, or Gen Y, and the Gen Z. And they have different expectations. So how do you keep that fresh? I've seen your inroads of sustainability. I've seen your sports platform. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
I think the consumer interest and preferences are changing as we go along. I think one of the big topics, even including my own kids, they actually they look at my own packaging which comes home, or let's say from an e-commerce, and they keep asking me, you guys don't use this so much packaging material, why do I send so much? Okay, and I have to tell them that, otherwise the product will get damaged, but they're like, you guys should find better solutions for it, right? And the whole sustainability thing, right? It is something which is they feel for it. Okay, they feel for things like that. And I think these are topics, right? For example, their influence is today TikTok, or their influence today is Instagram. Their influence today is a global reach. No longer is it what is happening in my country, it is what is happening globally. If there is a war happening in any part of the world, it impacts them. They are starting to think about those things, right? So I think the brands have to be conscious of the fact that today's consumer is extremely well connected. He is influenced by multiple things across the world, not just what is happening in his little locality, okay, not just what is happening in Singapore or what is just happening in Philippines. He's impressed by what's happening in Europe, what's happening in Russia, what's happening in Korea, and he's taking his influence points from there. So marketing has become very global. Product line has to become more global. Trend lines, if something is doing well in US, something's doing well in Japan, something's doing well in Korea, you can put your money behind it. It will also do well here. Okay, it's as simple as that. The audience is extremely well connected, and it is not even that the trend will come after 6 months. The trend almost comes the next week. Okay, so that is something that the brands have to work towards, right? And so a lot of times the brands think that certain markets are behind, so we will do it later, but it doesn't work. So in my mind, you have to adapt to this changing mindset of the consumer.
The role of technology in all of this brand building. What are your thoughts on that? How pervasive will it be?
Okay, 10 years back, when I used to make my budget for the company, I have to park my investments under various buckets, right?
Right.
And you would generally park your investments under your capex, under fixtures, right? Or store development, right? That would be your largest piece of bucket where you're putting money behind. Today, my largest ticket item is IT.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Largest item is IT. Whether I'm spending on front-end technology or I'm spending on back-end technology, okay? The largest single item of spend has become that. Whether we are spending on a new consumer CRM application, whether we are spending on a new point of sale system, okay? Whether we are spending on a new warehouse management system, whether we are spending on a new merchandising system, and these costs are crazy. They're through the roof, right? And that is the impact of technology. There is no way you can operate a business today without being a consumer centric, for which you
Okay.
need a lot of technology. B, you need to be operationally efficient. Again, you need technology to make you operationally efficient, right? So whichever way you look at it, technology has now become part of our life on everything we are doing, right? On the consumer side of it, on the operation side of it, and this is going to remain in our on our P&L as a big ticket item.
All right. That's a great forecast on really how technology is going to impact us if we want to grow our business. All right. Lots of crazy things happening all over the world, more so in ASEAN and more so in the Philippines. So as we wind down this conversation, what are your words of advice to the Philippine retail community?
I think Philippines is about to. It's a mature market, but I think Philippines is still under-penetrated by global brands, and they
Okay.
haven't really taken off in a big way yet. I think when we look at brands like us, we're still walking into Philippines in a big way, right? So I think I see Philippines as a market which is about to explode. I see as Philippines population to its advantage. The fact that Filipinos are very profound in their English, it to their advantage. Okay, and I personally believe right now Philippines is probably ranked as the number 4 or the number 5th biggest market in Southeast Asia. Okay, uh, I see them coming up much faster than other markets. The younger generation is very brand conscious. The younger generation is wants it, is hungry for a better life, is hungry to do something about it, and they will fight for it. And I think that will ensure that retail will grow. Okay, more and more brands are going to come in, and more businesses will have to operate. The things that Philippines, or at least I need in my business to be successful in Philippines, is that I need to be able to take risk in Philippines. Without taking those risks, I cannot grow Philippines business. I have to be able to invest in that market, uh, not thinking for today, but thinking for tomorrow. That's one. Two, I need to be innovative, both from a product point of view,
Right.
from a business management point of view, from a marketing point of view. I need to bring innovation into the market. And I think every Philippines retailers have to think, what is the new thing that we're doing? We are attracting a consumer who is getting bored very quickly. Okay, he wants connectivity and he gets bored quickly. So what do we do which keeps him excited? Three, I think keeping that consumer in mind, if we take decisions rather than keeping P&L in mind, I think it's going to be a big change. Every organization, especially larger organization, tends to be very P&L focused. Uh, we need to think, how can we be consumer focused? P&L will follow through, and I think that's what we need to build up. So these are a couple of things that, at least for me, very important: bringing innovation in the market, taking risk in the market. This is the time to take risk. The market is still coming back, and whatever we see this year, next year is going to be a 20-30% growth over this year. So opening stores, having more presence in the market, making sure the right level of innovation, the right level of marketing is going to the market. Okay, and putting consumer in the center of everything is what I'm going to be focusing on.
Wow. Very stimulating conversation. Very hopeful too. Thank you so much, Sanjay, for spending time with us at Let's Talk Retail, the Philippine Retailers Association podcast. So we wish you a good weekend in Singapore. We hope to see you in Manila. Please do not hesitate to give us a call so we can roll out the red carpet for you. All right.
Sure.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Sanjay.
much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you too. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you, Sanjay. Very enlightening, very stimulating conversation today. And thank you for joining us all the way from Singapore. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Sanjay Roy, the GM for Southeast Asia for PUMA, on our 30th episode of Let's Talk Retail. Thank you, Sanjay, again. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We shall see you in our next episode for Let's Talk Retail. This is CJ Esena of the Shangri-La Plaza. Join us again on our next episode. Thank you and good day, everyone.